Good morning. Make sure I lock this door. I did. Good morning. It is Jackie Glass, Mama, Navy Vet Certified Doer, your laced up legislator, and we're going for a walk. We're doing it this morning. It's Thursday. We are into April. Look at us. Look at how far we've made it. 4 months into 2022. How you doing? Right? How are we doing? I hope that your week has been satisfying. Good morning. I hope that your week has been satisfying and in a way that makes you want to make some things happen. Good morning, Chioma. I will say this, right? It has been a trying week here for us. I know a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of frustration and confusion, and what I want. What I would love for us to hone in on is that we haven't stopped showing up, right? As long as the week goes, I do believe that there's a shift that is happening with, for, and by those who love our city and want to see the best of her. So let me give a couple announcements, and then I will follow that by the whole conversation about where we are at with and I hate to call it the gun violence situation because it's forever a part of our conversation. We know that in our Commonwealth over 1,000 people die from gun violence, whether that's suicide, domestic violence, or just straight up violence in the streets, but we'll have that conversation. So here's what I got today. If you did not know, is the state of the city address. All right, for every locality, most of the localities in Hampton Roads have a state of the city. Ours for the city of Norfolk just so happens to happen today at around noon. And at the state of the city, happens every year, and I think it's important for you all to know, to understand that a lot of times when we're having conversation about what is or is not happening, that what is or is not happening economically, these plans have been thought out years and years and years prior to us coming to the table and trying to advocate. And if I'm being so candid about, the spaces and places that I've been in this week, hearing a lot about budgeting and trying to get the sentiment of the community, because I have a responsibility to understand what's happening locally, to know what I need to take up to Richmond and what sorts of things what are the values of the community so that I represent them in a meaningful way. Is oftentimes that piece of knowing what's happening before it's already happened is missing for communities, for communities of people that don't have the free time to pay attention. So I will be reaching out to you all to look for more ways to have touch points other than just this live. We will be having a town hall on April 23rd at Yosemite. And I am hopeful that is another touch point for everyone, but we cannot keep advocating, or not say we cannot. What I will not allow to happen is that we keep advocating from a place of ignorance, and that's not by our own choice, but also advocating when after the fact, after decisions have already been made. There's a sort of foresight there. So the state of the city is where they talk about all the economic development, all the things that are happening, what they've done, where they're planning on going. It's a really important event to go to. I did select 15 people from the community, everyday people, to show up to these events, because typically you don't see everyday people there. Maybe Civic League folks, which are most of the times our elders. You see those sorts of things, but I think we have a responsibility to ensure that you're engaged in a meaningful way. What I will do is hopefully get some pictures and be able to debrief, because they usually give us a really nice pamphlet about the plans that the city has. I am sure we will be talking about gun violence in the state of the city. The mayor does a speech. It's put on by the Hampton Roads Chamber, and so I may have somebody stream part of it live for you all. And if there's a link for it live, I'll make sure that you have that too. It's really important. Second, as we sort of dive into this housing and what's happening, you all, there's always a lot of moving parts, especially on the local level, and that translates to the state level. There's always like a lot of moving parts that you can get sort of distracted from some things that happen and opportunities. But I thought I would be remiss if I didn't mention that next week, the Housing Choice Voucher Program is going to open up from April 12th to April 14th. That is really important because I sat on the Mayor's Commission for Social Equity and Economic Opportunity. And what we learned is that list is 1,000 strong, right? Like, there are a lot of people on the waiting list, and that there has been a long time wait for folks to be able to even get in, to be able to be eligible for a choice voucher. That window is tiny. That's 2 days. So if you know anyone that was like, hey, I've been trying to get on the list to put in to be able to get a choice voucher, next week, April 12th through the 14th. That's all you got. So spread the word. All right. Next. Okay. So spreading the housing, the cost. If you learned anything over the past couple days, or if you've been out in these streets over the past couple days, you realize that there is a strong, or weeks, there is a strong sentiment about the cost of housing here. Whether our educators can afford to be here, whether everyday people like can afford to live in our city, and are we being priced out? That's a huge piece. There's also an understanding that, especially when we're talking about this coming generation of folks that are starting to find their way, they're starting to find their way in society. A lot of them have student loan debt, right? Which is ridiculous. And I will say this, and I continue to say this should not be the only path for low to low income people to succeed, but the military is what prevented me from having to make that choice. It was my plan B, right? I could not afford, even with a partial scholarship, to run track. I still couldn't afford high school. I still couldn't afford college. And I did not know anything about student loans, to be quite honest. I did not have, as a kid, and oftentimes our kids in the middle, right? I wasn't exceptionally an exceptional scholar where I was taking A and B, but I wasn't below the grade where I should have been lost, but I was caught in the middle and never supported necessarily on what it looked like to make a good plan, to plan for college, or to be able to help my parents do that. So a lot of folks took on student loan debt. The student loan freeze is been extended to August 31st. I'm gonna say that again. So thank you from the federal level, right? This is how these things work. Feels like it's raining. It is. What a blessing. The student loan, there's a freeze until August 31st. Here's why that matters, right? While it sucks, it is an opportunity to maybe put a little bit more on there, so that when we unfreeze it in August, that it's like paying on the principal. I just worried that when all these things pick back up, and when we're not thinking about, when we get past thinking about the influence of COVID-19 on our quality of lives, that we're going to see a sink. So I want us to be able to seize the opportunities to put ourselves in a better financial situation. So housing vouchers, thank you, Denise, for putting that there, as well as the student loan debt freeze is extended into, thank you, Vince, this is all you, so I appreciate you. It is extended. Okay, I think that is all until I get into, so let's talk about the elephant that's always in the room this time of year. And let me just invite you all to, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, the chat is for you. You can always join in on the conversation by asking to be invited into the live to ask your question. I am perfectly okay with that. I love that you come and join us in the mornings and afternoons and the evenings as well. So, good morning. So as we transition from that to resources, whew, heavy is a heart, right? When you know we are looking for some form of consistency. We are looking for leadership. We're looking for all these things, and sometimes we don't see it in the way that is beneficial to us. I will say this: the least foresighted thing that one could ever do, and maybe this is a military mindset, the least foresighted thing that any leader can do is make the assumption that the problem of the whole is singularly triggered by one individual or one leader, and that ridding yourself of that one person or that one leader will solve the problem, especially in a time of unrest, right? We are still walking our way through COVID. We are still walking our way through this housing bubble, or not bubble, the bubbles don't pop at some point, but we are walking our way through some difficult things right now, and whether you're directly or indirectly impacted by it, everyone is seeing, everyone is feeling what it looks like to have violence in our community, right? If I know one thing, there is a sentiment of safe, right, that each of us want, not just for ourselves, but for our little citizens, for our neighbors. We want that word. So I'd ask you guys today in the chat, while we sort of walk our way into talking about gun violence and where things are going, how do you define safe? Like, that's an important piece. What is safe to you? Because I hear often, I want to live in a safe neighborhood. I want I want my kids to be safe. I just want the city to be a safer place. What does safe look like, or what does safe feel like? Because oftentimes it is a feeling, right? What I want us to also recognize is that sorry, a little kerfuffle going on with the neighbors. Realize that it's a relative statement, and that what safe looks like to you is not necessarily the same thing that safe looks or feel like for the next person. What's happening at the state level right now, and as you guys drop into the comments what safe is for you, what the heck, how would you define that? What's happening we know, and I don't know if you're aware, you guys are aware what's happening at the local level, right? People are being shuffled. Hypotheses are being made about what could or could not prevent what's happening in our communities. What else? Typical solutions are being brought forward, and there is a level of urgency when we see the way this happens every year. This happens every time. At the state level, and again, just short of connecting the dots to what we can do and how I can be of service as a resident, I will always stay engaged with the processes that are happening here in Norfolk. But also now as a delegate, I have to look at what is my duty and responsibility, and being a solutionary with you on these things to bring back home, whether it's resources or it's laws. Good morning. What I'm still doing here, I told you, I had to go to Richmond just Monday, and then I'm gonna have to go back when they call us back, and definitely gonna have to go back on the 27th, excuse me.
Because I saw they said something about the budget.
Yeah, we ain't got no budget yet. I'm walking. I'm on a live. But no, we ain't got no budget yet. So it's because we went up on Monday. That means we just said, hey, we're gonna go into a special session, and then on when the people that are supposed to like be getting the budget together do their thing, right? Like we're gonna whenever they figure out what they consensus, yeah, right. Then we got to go back up there and approve that. So then on the 27th this month is reconvene, where we'll go through all the different bills that are still, like the governor had to have all his stuff done by the 11th, like his vetoes and his amendments, and then we'll go back and go through all that stuff on the 27th. So I don't know when I'll go back. I'll probably go back before the 27th, but look, I love your face. You said keep me. Look, I didn't know you was interested in this stuff. I'm gonna make sure I keep you.
Girl,
Look, you was schooling me.
Girl, I got to know because I look at the news.
Stay abreast, right? It's beautiful, right? As a community, so I'm grateful that's one of my neighbors, that we have to stay abreast. And that's exactly what I have to be well aware of, what my role is in doing a service to not just folks of the 89th, but the city of Norfolk, because the way I looked at it is that the service in the Commonwealth, it's a service to all of us, right? We chose this path. We chose to say, I want to be the one. Then we choose to be solutionaries. So when I'm up there, we get to see a lot of different bills, and there's two bills in particular that are on the block relating to gun violence. Two different bills, right? There's one that's coming out of the House, which is House Bill 833, and I think I had a video way back when explaining how you can look up the bills and things like that on what's called LIS. LIS. So you can go and look up the bill and read it yourself. I don't know if it's great reading, but it's definitely a great tool to have in your tool belt. So House Bill 833, the sponsor, remember when I say the patron, remember when I say the patron, that's the person that brought the bill forth, that put it in. The patron is Delegate Wilt, and it is for a program called Operation Ceasefire. Now, then there's another bill, patron, meaning this person's brought it forth in the Senate, Senate Bill 487, which was brought forth by Senator McClellan, right? And she has a bill just that is centered around gun violence prevention. So oftentimes we've got to make some really tough decisions about what bills and how bills work and what it is that we're going to do. So before I dive into those bills, I'm going to take a look at what you guys said, what it makes a safe community, or what does safe mean for you. Thank you guys for putting your stuff in here. It's not on me. Safe, says Vince, says it feels like community full of resources, secure and decent food, clothing, and shelter. It's raining beautifully. Charlene says one of our favorite programs was pertaining to the school board night, career and technical education programs. Yes, career, that's super important. We're gonna walk back home, y'all. The rain is coming down a little hard. Last time it shut us out. Yup, career and technical education programs. Didi said safe is the feeling and understanding that a time like now with so many shootings and violence, there are reliable study resources to help protection regardless of your current living area. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I don't want to. Oh, this way. Regardless of your current living area, that's super important, right? You want to feel like not only that you're safe, but it doesn't matter where you live, that it's a priority. Ooh, the rain. And then Charlene, safe is not being worried about being shot while doing ordinary things. Yes. Who doesn't want to live their best life, right? Be able to walk out. And I'll say this. It's the ordinary things part. My son asked me the other day if he could go to the park, and I was so anxious I wanted to tell him no about just shooting, just what the possibility. And if you're like, you know, if you've had little citizens or nieces and nephews, you know, they die in my head 1,000 times, right? Like I see all the dangers of the world for them, and it's just exacerbated by the violence that we're seeing. Absolutely. It causes anxiety. So I think about the indirect trauma of when we don't feel like we can do ordinary things, Charlene, without fear of losing life. And I think we don't. When that's a form of trauma. That is a direct influence of gun violence, and that's how that secondary or tertiary trauma works in communities when you hear a gunshot. So there's a lot of pieces to gun violence prevention, but also recovery for communities. So let's hold those things in mind, what you guys said, when we talk about these two bills. So the first bill, House Bill 833, Operation Ceasefire. Okay, so it is an approach that would give grants to community organizations that are already working in the field of gun violence prevention. And then it also would be providing money for training and equipment for law enforcement, as well as a means for gun violence prevention. Now, originally, I will tell you, I voted against this bill. And once I get out of this rain, which I'm really close to doing, I'm going to break down why I voted against the bill. And maybe your suggestions as we're still, both of these bills are in conference, so there's some work. So there's some work to be done on both bills. There's some work to be done on both bills. Let me clean this for you. Okay, right. And so, I voted against this bill because what I do know is that it took some monies away from. My apologies. There we go. It took money away from some community organizations, and that it cut 22 million. It was a $22 million cut from something that was already in the budget. Hold up. You guys hear that? Let me get in this house. And unfortunately, I know I'm going to get ready to wrap up here. Unfortunately, let's turn on some lights here. Unfortunately, my whole paper of what I was going to tell you guys about is all gone. It's all gone. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to finish. Mimi, yeah, the ability to know that you can go to public places without being shot. I'm like, it's a lot. It's a simple thing, right? It's the simple things. As I sort of get myself together for you guys, let me, Bruce is visiting us. My paper's so wet that I can't read it. I can't read it. So it was 833. There it is, 833. All right, so part of this bill, it was heavy. So the reason why I voted for this bill, which is the ceasefire grant, which is House Bill 833, because there was already heavy appropriations. And when I say heavy appropriations, I mean heavy money being allocated for policing. I think it was $5 million already. And so the problem too is that it's a bill that I said I'm not going to vote for anything that puts more responsibilities or more stress on educators or on police officers, because like I said, there's a lot of things happening and we have the expectation that we keep putting more. Okay, look at this, guys. I just want you guys to see this because it's a whining Bruce. Hello, Bruce. Bruce just wants to be pet, y'all. Come here, Bruce. So part of it is that, yeah, good morning. Yep. So I'm going to get through this and I definitely will answer that question. So it was heavy appropriations. We asked the police to do too much already. $22 million, it was $22 million to cut from community public safety for non-policing options, because part of what I think we have to do, again, asking our police officers to do too much, is really be looking at non-policing approaches to public safety. If we're not going to pay them more, we should not be asking them to do more. And I feel that same way about educators. If we're not going to pay them more, we should not be asking them to do more, because they are at the forefront, our educators and our police officers, of the conflict that we see happening with our citizens, whether it's in the school or in the community. And it does not have, yeah, that piece. So then also why I voted for it is because there was already ARPA funds at the state level set aside, $7 million that sort of created this slush fund for police. Not to mention, the governor also mentioned that he was going to be giving $100 million worth of ARPA funds to any police department that increased their funding. So I did not feel like we needed another bill to increase the funding to police, with the sentiment that we are decreasing gun violence. It doesn't make sense. I don't think you can police your way out of violence, if that makes any sense. And it didn't necessarily address the gun violence situation in a way that speaks to prevention, because that's what we're trying to do, right? However, as I get my face together, my glasses are super wet. Can you see that? Specs. Going back to my paper here. But walking over to Jennifer McClellan's bill, which was the patron, was Senate Bill 487, right? So Senate Bill 487, this bill, I think I voted for the amendments. I think I voted for the amendments to it. I'm not 100% sure. I have to check how I voted on this one. But Senate Bill 487 would also create a Center for gun violence prevention under the DCJS, the Department of Criminal Justice Services. It's important. We can't study everything forever, but we can understand the best practices that'll move us forward. So, during the pandemic, I think I mentioned this. What Chief Boone did was start studying where guns are there, because they confiscate guns off the street. They were tracking where the guns were coming from, right? That costs money to study that. That costs. And then really getting as close to the root of the problem as possible will get you closer to solving the problem. It's like going after the corner boy when you need to be going after the distributor, right? We're on the corner, but we should be at the port. And so what he was doing was he was taking a look and tracking these guns back to where they originated. Out of the 500 or something guns that were confiscated, 222 originated right here in our own backyard at two predominant gun shops here. Are the gun shop owners at fault for these guns? No. Are there people that possibly are consistently doing this, buying legal guns and putting them in people's hands that did not purchase the gun, that end up doing illegal stuff or end up in cars where they're being compensated? Yes. So getting closer to the root of the problem. I do believe in studies that are solution driven, right? How do we get close to and so I thought that was really important, having that as a part of the DCJS, the Department of Criminal Justice Services, there, while also providing a grant for community programs, because what I know is that there are amazing organizations in our community that are doing the things that need to happen for prevention. And I don't believe prevention starts with policing. Right? So that's why I voted the way I voted. Those are two bills. Like I said, we know that in the Commonwealth, over 1,000 people die from gun violence every year. And part of that gun violence prevention study also addressed domestic violence. It addressed suicide and the things that we see in the community. So that's why I supported that. Now, yes, there's a DNR aspect to it, but that's not why I made my decision. I just do not and will not. And I'm saying this, I have to have those. I think if you were following us during the session, there are certain questions, because we're asked, as a legislator, I'm asked to make a lot of decisions all at once, right? A lot. And they do not come without consequence, right? I have to own those decisions. And so one of them is, does this, especially when it comes to policing and educators, are we asking the educator, are we asking the officer to do more? If the answer is yes, and there's no and, if there is no yes and we're paying them more, I cannot support it. Right? I would do unfunded mandates for folks that we keep pointing our fingers at. The culture around policing is very heavy. Culture around teaching is very heavy, meaning it's divisive, the culture around both of those entities. So no, I won't be doing that. So did you understand where I'm coming from as your leader? Now, to the question, Ms. Deborah, good morning. Do I know why Chief Boone left us in the midst of this crisis? I have some hypotheses as to why Chief Boone was released of his duties. I think that I think that it's important to understand. I said earlier that the mindset that I have, I think that the easiest solution, oftentimes when things are hard and it's politically tough, is to find someone to bear the load. There has to be a quick solution, right? And I believe that that decision was the quickest and easiest solution to sort of a really hard problem. I would not necessarily say why Chief Boone left, but I would say that knowing that we're in crisis and knowing that we have leadership that is looking to do this policing thing a little bit differently. I'm saying this from the data that's been collected and the ways that we were pushing forward. It is a huge disappointment, right? It is. And I know that many people are probably happy. Many people are probably upset. But what we cannot do, what our city cannot do, what the Commonwealth cannot do, is revert back to the days of the past where all we're doing is cracking skulls, as people say, right? All we're doing is we're reverting back to old police tactics to solve this problem because we're afraid. We all just went through and talked about what makes us feel safe, right? What makes us feel safe. And it is so easy in a point of fear, right? Because I'm afraid, right? Like, I don't know. As Charlene said, I want to be able to do everyday things, right? Everyday things. Without the fear of losing my life. I want my children to be able to do, and my husband to be, and my mother to be able to do everyday things in the city and off of my friends, without that worry. And this was, I don't want to say unfortunate, but I think that, again, the least foresighted thing that any leader can do is to assume that that the removal of one person will immediately solve a problem, because you still have to deal with the culture that is there, right? You still have to deal with the things that are there. But we need to continue on the path, and we need to pressure and make sure that we're assuring in our space and place, in our corner of the Commonwealth, that we tell our leadership that we want a leader that is going to continue that legacy of building trust in the community and building relationships in a way that prevents some of the things that we're saying, but also make the investment that has not been made to enable that person to do their job better, right? Because what we do know is that education and housing and employment deter crime faster than prison or police. Like, that is something that we know. And so I think that the decision, it's a mourning process for us, because I think we were going in the right path. Kilabus, y'all, Brother Aswads, and I know I'm holding y'all. We're 15 minutes over, as always. Book, y'all, The Village. How Not to Leave Our Children Behind speaks magnitudes. And I'll be making sure that I promote Mr. Aswad is having a youth Anthony Rhodes youth conference, where a lot of times he is having the youth talk about gun violence, talk about employment, talk about all this stuff. It'll be happening at the Kroc Center, so keep your eyes and ears out for that. Denise say, sad to see the chief go, folks blaming him for not getting control of gun rights. Yep. So, like everyone, as my dad says, opinions are like bum holes. Everybody's going to have one. But I think we have a responsibility, myself as a legislator, looking at these bills. House Bill 833, Senate Bill 487, is really looking at what is going to have the greatest impact in a positive way on our community. We collectively on the streets here in Norfolk have a responsibility to ensure that as over these next 5 months, our leaders are selecting a new police chief, that we continue legacy of relationship building trust, and not just thinking that the lock 'em up mentality is going to fix the problem. It'll actually exacerbate it. There are a lot of frustrations. It is clear that that we are in a crisis of interpersonal communications. We are in a crisis of conflict management right now. That is very clear, whether it's within households or outside. This is why we talked about during the pandemic, we had to be really, really careful about what's happening domestic violence wise, what's happening suicide wise. And now if we think about our own things, all the own violence that we are worried about in the homes across the United States, across the Commonwealth, and in our city, that spills out into the streets where conflict management is just not something people are ready for. So until we understand that there is some work that we have to do resource wise, and it's not just police presence, it's not just security cameras, because people are still going to have to interact with each other. I am so sad to say that I did send my son to the park the other day, and he came home with his lip busted because he got in a fight, and I was very upset and very afraid. My anxiety was high for the entire day. Like conflict resolution, people are resorting to violence, right? Violence is the second option. Exchange words or the first, it's in the top three. That's a problem, right? Acknowledge that straw, as I think was mentioned, straw purchasing of guns. Like if we're talking about violence as a solution to conflict resolution, violence is a choice. They're going to pick up their fists or they're going to pick up their gun. And if we don't address that, right, if we don't address the picking up the fists, if we don't address picking up the guns, but also the guns that are legally purchased to do illegal stuff, not purchased by the person, by the shooter, that straw, if we don't address these things, then we have a whole issue. But that requires a lot of us coming to the table and having some honest conversations about what is or is not happening and what way we can move forward. I will say, y'all, as I said the other day, if you weren't with us live before, I had a hard conversation with a representative from the NRA. I'm walking our way towards having a conversation to the gun owners, the gun shop owners in our city. It's not easy. It causes me a little bit of anxiety because I'm like, I'm a gun owner. I am not trying to take people guns, but I am trying to ensure that we are coming from a place that we're seeing a city that is safe by definition for the masses, right? And straw purchasing is not going to help. We don't allow straw donors in campaign finance. We shouldn't allow straw purchasing with guns. We've got to do something about that. Restorative justice is a huge solution, which is why George Mason University, I'm going to be reaching out to those folks, to their Center of Conflict Resolution. That is the Institute of Conflict Resolution, to see what are some strategies that they've seen in cities and spaces and schools and places that maybe we can bring here to start that path. And that starts very, very, very young. Yeah. But if you want to do anything, I'm looking at, if you want to do anything, I would say, I am sure that Chief would appreciate, all of your kind words. But the so what, now what here is the accountability piece of the type of policing we want to see in our city. Remember that, the neck turns ahead. So as they search, I think we need to be being really brilliant about what kind of policing we want to see in our city. I think we were going in the right direction. You need to be holding me accountable about what kinds of funds, what kind of advocacy is happening at the state level. Yep. What type of funds are happening at the state level, and really hold us as your state level legislators accountable for the type of money that are coming down to the departments, the type of programming that's coming down, and what the prevention piece looks like. Remember I said there's 2 bills on the table. When we go back, I think you guys, if you've been here, when we go back, we're going to have to make some decisions. So advocate up and down, right? You hold me accountable. Right? If you have opinions about House Bill of 833, which is the Operation Ceasefire, or opinions about Senate Bill 487, you can go ahead and email them to deljglass@house.virginia.gov. If you have some solutions, some questions, some comments, you can go ahead and email them to us. Most times, if it's just an opinion statement, we hold that on and we take that into consideration. If you ask a direct question, we'll definitely make sure that we get back to you. But that's our job. We're accountable to you, and we have to own our decisions. I am guided by your presence and thankful for it. I'm excited about the work we're going to do together. And I'm going to see y'all. Some of y'all I'm going to see in a little bit at the State of the City. Don't forget, that's a huge, huge deal happening today. But until Thursday, or until Tuesday. I'm grateful. Grateful to serve. Can't wait to get to work. It's the power of the people. We keep it moving. So till next time, I'm Jackie Glass, Mama, Navy vet, certified doer, and your laced up legislator. Here we go. Y'all make it a great day, okay?